Today I will be teaching you how to rapidly improve in Broken Arrow. I will show you a framework that I use to improve my performance. For example, this framework allowed me to go from being completely ineffective with using air units to doing this.
Thank you for killing the drone.
Yeah,
Oh,
bro.
whoa,
Fuck
very
yeah.
nice, very nice. Thank you.
Nice coming in.
Fuck yeah.
Very nice.
Fuck yeah.
Very nice.
Thanks.
This is the order in which we will discuss our framework for improving your skills in Broken Arrow. So we have 4 main points here. For the first one, how do your units die? The second point, what are killing your units? Third, can you respond appropriately? And finally, we will show some in-game examples of how I'm able to identify a problem and come up with a solution to be much more effective in-game. So now we're going to go ahead and get into our main points. For the first one, how do your units die? We have 4 subpoints that we'll be going into. For the first one, offensive mistakes. The second one, defensive mistakes. Third, logistical mistakes. And the last, offering solutions. Now, the solution that I offer is actually really simple, but I'll make sure to go in depth with examples at the end of the first main point. Now, the mistakes that I'm going to show you here is not going to be extensive of every single mistake that you can make. It's mainly going to be general mistakes that I find that people are making in the game. This way, I'm able to maintain the wide accessibility of this information. So let's go ahead and get into the offensive mistakes. So for our first offensive mistakes is overextending or being too aggressive. So when you do a push, do you struggle to handle certain units? Do you find yourself unable to deal with them? Or do you find yourself completely overwhelmed? If so, then this is the mistake you are making. For our next mistake is not utilizing flanks. Do you keep pushing into the same direction with no success while being completely oblivious to the flank being completely open? Then this is the mistake that you may be making. The next mistake, counter units aren't present to support your push. If you have no units capable of specific roles for support, for example, any anti-armor units, any anti-air units, any anti-infantry units, for example, then this is the mistake you are making. Next, we have our defensive mistakes. For the first defensive mistake is not having any counter units whatsoever. The whole point of defending is to counter anything they could throw at you, basically to hold the line. If you are unable to handle any situation or any unit, then this is the problem you are making when it comes to a defensive line. The next mistake is not reinforcing efficiently. Are you unable to provide sufficient manpower to your front line? Are you not weaving your units in and out to maintain a strong defensive line? Then this is the mistake that you are making. The last mistake for defensive is not switching buildings to avoid artillery. Buildings that you are going to want to switch to should maintain a similar advantage from the one you left. However, if this option really isn't available to you, then you can go ahead and stay, which is riskier, or you can move to the nearest safe location. If you aren't doing this, then this is the mistake you are making as well. Next, we could go ahead and discuss our logistical mistakes. So our first logistical mistake is you don't have a safe spot for your units to resupply from. Or does your supply position constantly get destroyed with units or without units? Then this is one of the mistakes that you're making when it comes to logistics. You're not having a safe spot. Next is your safe spot isn't in an effective and an efficient spot. In other words, it's too far. You're not able to reinforce your lines quick enough. Next is you're not maintaining a supply reserves. In other words, you're consistently running out of supplies. If you go from having 2,000 supplies to about 500, well then you're making this mistake. The next is that you're not moving your supply spot consistently. You need to be moving your supplies in order to avoid them getting destroyed, because a decent player is going to try to identify where your supplies are so they can destroy them and stop you from being able to regenerate and reinforce your front line. So now we will go ahead and discuss the solutions. The hardest part actually is identifying the problem, and I will show you this later because once we're able to identify in the example that I will give later in the video, we're able to come up with a pretty simple solution to this to make us improve that much more. Now, the solution is pretty simple. You're just going to do the exact opposite of whatever mistake you are making. Now, this may seem pretty obvious, but it really isn't. A lot of players really struggle with trying to identify the key things and then just doing the opposite of that. For example, if you're overextending, then just make sure that you are not pushing up too much without the proper support. Because if you're able to bring the proper support for your units, then no matter how far you push in, you'll be able to handle most things that come your way. If you're not utilizing flanks, for example, to make sure you have some reconnaissance units to be able to gather intelligence on whether or not that flank is optimal for you to push. Because then at least you're utilizing that flank to figure out maybe a good counteroffensive going there to expose their weak line and destroy the enemy. Next, if you don't have any counter units to support you when you're doing a push, well then make sure you're just bringing counter units with you. For our defensive mistakes, if you don't have any counter units whatsoever, we'll just bring counter units to your front line to make sure you have a good line to be able to counter anything that they throw at you. If you're not reinforcing efficiently, make sure that you're consistently bringing up units to be able to maintain that front line. And if you're not switching buildings to avoid artillery, just switch buildings. It really is that simple, guys. You just have to do the exact inverse of whatever mistake you are making. This will allow you to see really good results and improve your overall experience in the game. Now I'm going to quickly go over possible situations and give some solutions to those situations, showing which units will be best for handling that situation. This will go directly into our second point of what are killing your units. So now we're just going to go ahead and give some unit examples to show how to counter. So let's say you're struggling with dealing with helicopters, right? So you're like, you have a front line and you're being too aggressive, or you don't have the proper support. Like you brought a whole front line, they're getting destroyed by helicopters. So what are some things that you can do? So if you're playing the Russians, what I really love using is the Igla or I think what is the Verba. The Verba are going to be really good for dealing with heli units. They fire super fast and they're just really effective at taking them out, especially since they have a pretty good distance of 2,100 meters and they're equipped with 6 of their the missiles. Another really good anti-heli unit is going to be the Sosna, if I could find it here. For dealing with heli is the Sosna. This one's really good. It has 18 Stinger missiles, or Sosna missiles, and it has a low altitude range of 2,400 with a high altitude range of 1,800. This one, I think is probably the best anti-helicopter unit in the game. I really love using this thing, especially in its Sosna missile package. I don't really use it when it comes to the 57mm gun, but the Sosna missiles, that's another way you could counter helicopter units if that's what you're struggling with. And for the US side, I like using, the Avenger. So the Avenger with its double Stinger pods is really effective. Also, if you pair this up with the Shorad, if I could find it here, I like using the Shorad as well. So here you got the linebacker, you equip it with the Shorad, and you increase the armor and upgrade the engine. You use these two together, you use this one to tank the hits, and then you use the Avenger for a really fast fire rate of destroying with the enemy heli, or even just low flying air units. And then also the infantry that I like using for this is the Stinger team, since they are equipped with 2 Stingers, so they'll be really effective at dealing with those enemy heli units. So that's how you deal with heli units. These are the units that deal really good damage and are really effective against heli units. This is going to be the counter unit for them. Just wanted to stop the video here for a second, but if you guys are enjoying the content that I make, then definitely consider subscribing. And you guys are looking for a good community, then definitely join our Discord, link in the description. Also, if you guys are looking for a really cool website to really help you out in your Broken Arrow experience, then I would highly recommend checking out BARmory.net. I will put the link in the description below. All right, let's get back to the video. Now let's say you're struggling dealing with armor. If you're on the US side, I like using the TOW 2A. Using it with its overfly attack, it's going to be really effective there. You can pair this up with some weapon squads, or even some, if you can find them, the cavalry scouts. I believe they are the special forces. Let me see where they're at. I think armored, actually. Yeah, pairing these guys with the cavalry scouts, so you have 2 javelins, or you'll have a TOW missile with a javelin, or even just pairing the weapon squad with the javelin. These guys are going to be really good at defending points. The javelin has a really good, or the cavalry scouts have a really good range of 1,750, and if you equip them with the weapon squad, you'll have 3 javelins actually, and they'll be really good at effectively taking out enemy vehicles. Since they target the same vehicle, they'll be shooting 3 rounds at it. So the first one hitting and going through, or hitting the APS, destroying the APS, and then the second missile hitting and making contact, and the third one also making contact and effectively destroying the enemy unit. Again, you could also just take in some heavy tanks. I like using the SEP V3, maxing out the armor. It's really good against enemy vehicles as well. A little expensive, but it'll be pretty effective. Also, if you want to counter, you could use the Paladin in its cluster rounds. And then for the Russian side, if you want to use a vehicle to counter enemy vehicle units, I like to use the Magnolia. It has, I believe, 60 rounds. If you can find it here. Not super familiar with using the arsenal. I just go into my deck and find it. So let's see if I can find it here. Might take me a little bit. Oh, here we go. Magnolia. 16 rounds of cluster and a fire rate of, or aim time of 6 to 8 seconds. This thing is phenomenal at destroying enemy vehicles, enemy tanks. It's going to be really effective at holding the defensive line with the Russians here and stopping them from getting a push, especially with the enemy vehicles. Also, you could use the Conquerors for dealing with enemy vehicles, or even some of the Marines, the Moskaya, I believe. Where's the one that has, yeah, Moskaya? The ones with, let's see, there's one of these units here have a really good pen damage. I believe it is the struck, yeah, 900 millimeters of explosive damage, the penetration. So that's gonna be pretty effective there if you want to deal with, for the Russians, dealing with enemy or not enemy air, but enemy vehicle units. The units I like using too to deal with enemy tanks is that I like putting in the Cornet behind my friendly tanks, and I'll put the Cornet 2 ATGM, or let me see, is it this one? I believe it is this one. Yeah, Cornet ATGM. And then I like to put either a Terminator or a Barbarous in front of that, so that way the Cornet is doing a pretty good rate of fire against the enemy vehicles, while the Terminator or the Barbarous are taking the shots from the main vehicles. It's going to be really effective at taking out enemy vehicles as well. Now, if you're dealing with enemy air units, for the Russians, I like to bring in, the Ente. I like using the Ente. This one has, yeah, 4 missiles, and I'll be able to, I think, pretty much one-shot any enemy vehicle that's coming nearby. But I think I prefer taking the Vityaz, which I like mainly for the munitions and its range. For the Americans, when it comes to dealing damage to air units, I like having the PAC-2. It's going to be usually going to one-shot those air units, or the PAC-3 MSC, mainly because it comes with, if we have the weapon package and we come with 12, it's going to be about 300, but these guys are really good for just, it has a pretty good aim time of 1 to 2 seconds, and the missiles per target is about 2, and it can shoot up to 3 different targets. So this thing is, I love it because the high ammunition rate and the effectiveness against multiple targets and the missiles that it will shoot per target. Now, if you're struggling with dealing with infantry, what you can do for the Americans is bring some CQC teams, so the Marine Raiders, for the Front Armored Brigade, the Mechanized Engineers, or the, let's see, where else are they at? The Combat Engineers too. These guys will be pretty good at dealing with units in a close quarters environment. Also, the Delta Force, really effective at dealing with enemy infantry. Again, you're going to make sure that you're choosing the close quarters loadout when you're going to deal with enemy infantry. Also, consider using the MGLs, pretty good at dealing some damage, pretty heavy damage against infantry units. And then for the Russians, I know that the SSO are pretty good at dealing with close quarters, and then also if I could find them, the Churning are really good too. They come with, if you take it in its grenade launcher variant. Also, the Onamek, I can't say its name, but these guys are really good for close quarters as well. And then if we have, another really good CQC unit is I can't say it, but these guys are really good for dealing with CQC units as well. So this is going to be the Russian alternative for dealing with for anti-infantry. And one of the cool ways to identify if a unit is a CQC team, you can just go ahead and see in their unit details, and it will show some flash pings, and that way you'll be able to identify if they are anti-infantry. And not all of them that are anti-infantry are going to have flash pings, but the ones that do definitely are anti-infantry. So now we have just 2 more main points to go ahead and get into. These are going to be the main ones before we get into the game example. So for the second main point is that we're going to be talking about what are killing your units, and this is going to make you be able to identify the units that are giving you the most trouble. And then once you find out what units are dying, where your units are dying from, so whether it be infantry, vehicles, heli, or air or artillery, then you'll be able to isolate that unit and then bring in the correct response to that unit. And then if you're having trouble, that's the reason why I listed a bunch of units for countering, so that way you could identify and isolate whatever unit is giving you the most trouble. So if it's air, then you could go back in the video and see, oh, well, here's one unit that I could use to counter air. And also, just in general, if you're familiar with it, then you're able to pick whatever unit you want to go ahead and be whatever that's most effective for you to use in that situation. Now, for our third and last main point before we get into the examples is that in order to help you improve, are you able to respond appropriately? So once you identify the unit that is causing the most trouble, do you have units that are able to handle it, right? So are they able to do it well? In other words, are they specific to countering that? Like if you're dealing with vehicles, do you have a tow unit? Do you have a Cav Scout? Do you have a Ranger's Maz? Do you have something to deal with those type of vehicles that especially they're going to be really good at penetrating and doing a lot of damage? And if you figure out that you don't have it, then you just got to adjust as needed. Include those counter units so that you're able to be more proficient in the game. And so that's going to be pretty much it for our framework for how to improve rapidly in Broken Arrow. If you guys follow these steps, you guys will have a lot more success, and you guys should see some improvement in the game. Also, if you guys are enjoying this video, before we continue, definitely consider subscribing. So now we're going to go ahead and get into some in-game examples of using this framework to improve. So let's go ahead and just start simple of identifying the problem. So the problem that I identified was that I wasn't able to effectively deal with anti-air units. So in my last matches, the last couple of games that I had some air units, but I wasn't really able to effectively use them. So I was like, okay, what's a problem that I'm having? the AA is a problem that I'm having. I didn't have enough seed units capable of handling those units. So I didn't have the, it was more of an offensive mistake, right? I didn't have units to counter. So what do? We bring more units to counter. So instead of bringing just 2 F-35As, well, in this instance here, I only brought 2 out, but in the deck that I'm using here, I have 4 F-35As, all equipped with seed anti-radiation missiles, able to deal with those radar units. So this was our solution to the problem, and it did in fact work. I was able to not only have an effective use of dealing with those AA units, but that allowed me to be more effective doing bombing runs with my Striegels. So that's all the solution is, guys. It really is just identifying the problem and figuring out what the problem really is. So for this instance, the problem was not having enough units to counter the radar units. And so we just go ahead and bring more of the F-35As, and we're able to destroy the enemy radars. So that was just the first instance of bringing those F-35As out. In this situation, I'm making a mistake here with not really, we didn't, in the last video footage here that I showed you guys, I wasn't able to really take out any air units or anti-air units there, as we didn't see any of them, any death signs, so we weren't really notified of any AA being taken out. So in this instance, I'm being a little too aggressive because I wasn't able to deal with the AA threat. Then this isn't going to allow me to be as effective with my Thunderbolt here. So we bring him in. We're going to try to get some kills here because we did identify some enemy units, but since we weren't able to wipe out the enemy anti-air units, we weren't able to make it low risk for our unit here. And that's what you really want to do when you're using air units. You want to make sure that you're minimizing the risk for them, so that way they can be effective and they're not going to be getting shot down before they're able to really do anything here. Now, in this situation, we were aware that they did actually have some AA units, and I wasn't able to be as effective as I could have. I did destroy a supply thing there and get some damage to those units, but I lost my unit in that trade there, and it wasn't really a good trade-off. I mean, they could have a lot of supplies there, but I doubt it. And so, well, again, making sure that you're utilizing the units you have to counter would have been, for me in this situation, would have been better. And I was being a little too hasty there. And in this instance, I didn't let my Thunderbolt go ahead and finish its run, which if I would have done so, I would have been able to get that kill probably of that Sosna. But I was being too hesitant there, and I tried to call him out before he was able to do the run, and that cost me to lose that unit without even an effective trade, because I probably would have lost that unit there, but at least if I would have let it run its course, it would have been able to most likely take out that Sosna. Now here I'm doing again with the Striegel, but I'm not sure if this is going to be the most effective, because I don't believe I've taken out the enemy AA, or at least reduced the number of units that are capable of dealing with anti-air, or dealing with my air units. Because then at least I will have less units shooting at me, and make it just reducing the risk overall and making my units more effective in the field. So here we're going to go ahead and look at this. I believe we'll get a shot off on that drone there, and then we were able to get some hits on this tree line here, which we were successful. So we were able to get those units killed, destroy the Sosna and whatever other units were located in that field. But we did just see on the left here that we were getting shot at with AA, but we were able to successfully get out of there. I like using the afterburner right when I'm about to drop a load of bombs on an enemy position there. That way I'm able to quickly bug out of there and just reduce the likelihood of getting shot down. So here we're trying to do the same thing with our Thunderbolt, but as you notice here, since we did not deal with that AA threat, that's going to render our Thunderbolt ineffective. So it would have been much better for me to just pull back my Thunderbolt, and waiting until I dealt with the AA. Here we're able to bring up some F-35As to try to reduce the amount of anti-air units they have, and I believe we were able to successfully do this. I like bringing 2 of them out because just having one, it's not going to be as effective as shooting 4 missiles, because if you just bring 1, then you're only going to be equipped with 2 seed missiles. So here again, we're able to get a nice Striegel run. Since we're able to deal with some AA threats, we're able to be effective with that Striegel there. Another Striegel run, as you can see here, but this one I was not as effective with, since I did not deal prior with those anti-air units. So again, just coming back to the offensive mistake of not having anything to counter enemy units, and there it was no F-35As bringing out prior to my Striegel to destroy those anti-air units. And then the same thing happening here with my Thunderbolt. I didn't have anything to deal with those AA in the back or in the front, and I suffered for it. So here we notice that there's a bunch of anti-air units in the back, so we're going to go ahead and bring out 3 F-35As, Usually I like to keep them at a low altitude and fly them in with hold fire, so that way when I do identify some targets with the aim and ready to fire, then once they get closer I'll let them loose. But here I wasn't utilizing that tactic there, being a little too hasty. So we were able to get some kills with these F-35s being effective and reducing the amount of AA in the field, so that way we could be effective with our Striegels and our Thunderbolts. Here we were also able to get another AA kill, as you can see there. Again, just minimizing the threats to my bombers and my Thunderbolt. So here, since we were able to reduce the amount of AA, and we know that they probably weren't able to quickly reinforce the amount of AA that they had, since they were just taken out just recently. And also here, I was trying to go in with my F-15C here, sort of using it as bait for the enemy AA, but I didn't really do it in a good way. Did it way too soon. So here we were able to be effective with our Striegel there, able to also bug out since we were able to use our afterburners and keep them at a low altitude, successfully getting a bombing run on those enemy units there, being really effective with it. Here again, able to be effective with our Striegel, getting a decent amount of kills, but since we did not deal with the AA in the back there prior to doing that run, it ended up destroying us. But overall, that was a pretty fun match. I was much more effective than the last games when I was trying to use air units. So again, just sticking with this framework, identifying the problem, figuring out specifically what problem it was, and identifying the units that were causing that problem, and then coming up with a solution to counter those units. So again, really simple and really effective. And if you guys enjoyed, consider subscribing, and I will catch you guys in the next video.